Welcome back to the workshop. I'm Josh, and this week we're talking about dull. I'll give you a couple of pointers to visually inspect your knife. We'll go through some cut tests and other tests you can do. And then next week, we're going to jump into how to take those tests and determine how to sharpen your knife. The number one thing to keep in mind, you're dealing with a sharp edge, and it's important to make sure that you keep your hands clear and that you're safe using it. So the first test that I like to do is a visual test. I'll look down the blade and I'm looking for light reflection. If the top of the blade is bent or flattened in any spot, it's going to reflect light differently than a perfectly sharp edge. So I'll find some light, I'll put my back to that light, and I'll look down the edge. If I see light reflecting inconsistently in different places, or if there's light reflecting across the whole blade, likely it needs to be sharpened. As you're looking for that light, tip the knife from side to side, rotate it a little bit, and inspect the tip as well. This keeps your hands clear of the knife and gives you a good idea of different sections that may need to be sharpened, high use areas, and gives you a good place to start when sharpening. Something else I look for when I visually inspect a knife is any chips and nicks. To do this, I'll hold the knife sideways and I'll hold it up to the light and look at the horizon of that blade. I'll be able to see any places where it's dipped in or damaged, and I definitely want to take a look at the tip too to see if it's flattened or chipped off. You know, a lot of us use our knives as a tool as much as it is a cutting tool, and that tip can break off very easy. Another test you can do that might be a little more nerve-wracking for some is a fingernail test, or I'll give you an alternative for that. So if you hold your fingernail or thumbnail at a 45-degree angle, give or take, and you set the knife on your thumbnail, if it sticks, it's sharp. Again, this knife seems to be sharp towards the heel, but as I work towards the belly, there's definitely some flat spots or dull spots. By contrast, a sharp knife will stick, and it will stick along the whole length of the blade. It should be very consistent. If you're not comfortable putting your thumbnail up to the guillotine, then I have a suggestion. Everyone has a Sharpie, and it acts very similar. Hold the Sharpie at about a 45-degree angle, and again, rest the knife on the Sharpie. If it slides down, the knife's not sharp. You can see that this knife grabs towards the heel, but again, as I move towards the tip, it slides right off. The test is the same. A Sharpie is a safer option. I'm going to kick it over to Kyle in the kitchen, and he's going to show us some cutting tests.
Thanks, Josh. Those are great tips to safely check how dull your knife is. Those same skills can be applied to your kitchen cutlery, whether it's a paring knife or cleaver, chef knife. All of those same tips will help you safely assess the level of dull on your kitchen knives. So here we are in my home kitchen, and I've got an assortment here of my own personal kitchen knives. Now, this is an older knife that was in the drawer. It's one of those low use, high utility knives, and I'll walk through those checks that Josh just taught us. First I'm going to do is look down the length of the blade, and I can see reflection all the way along the length of that blade. So that's telling me I'm getting that reflection back, which would imply that I've got some dull spots on my knife. Next, I'm going to look at the profile of the knife. I don't see any damage, no nicks, no chips. So I've just got a dull knife with no damage. Next, I'm going to apply the thumbnail test. And just like Josh taught us, that is just sliding right off my thumbnail. I'm not getting any bite from that knife. So that is a dull knife. But there's also practical applications that you can use in your kitchen to assess the level of dull of your knives. I've got some fresh herbs out of the garden here and a very ripe tomato. As we all know, those can be the measure of sharp and dull. Does it cleanly slice through a tomato, and does it crisply cut your fresh garden herbs, or does it smash them down onto the cutting board? Let's try this knife that I've just assessed as dull and see how it performs. First up on the tomato, oh my gosh, I can't even saw through. That knife is so hopelessly dull. Now let's try on the garden herbs. Ooh, what a mess. It just kind of smashes them down. Not ideal. That knife is ready to be sharpened. Now switching over to a knife I use more frequently. This is one that I maintain, if not daily, at least every other use. Couple quick passes on a ceramic hone and I can keep this knife in tip-top condition. So let's take a look. I'm going to look down the edge and I don't see any reflection coming off that edge. Commonly a chef knife, you'll see that reflection here. That tends to be the heavy use position on a chef knife. So you may see it more pronounced here than at the heel or the tip, but I'm not getting any reflection here off this edge. I also look down the profile and I don't see any nicks or chips or damage. That looks like a really nice clean profile. And lastly, let's try the thumbnail test. With a very light peck, that knife just bites right into my thumbnail. I picked up a little slide up here in the belly. Oh, there it is. So that's going to be a spot I'm going to pay attention to during my next sharpening. And just like we talked about, very common in the belly. So let's give it the performance test that we just talked about. Does it slice my tomato cleanly? And does it give me perfectly crisp cut garden herbs? Wow, that is dramatically improved cutting experience on the tomato. Now let's go over to our garden herbs. Very crisply cut. I'm not crushing them at all. Perfectly cylindrical chives to garnish my next meal. So there you have it. Quick, easy, safe ways to assess the level of dull on your kitchen knives. We'll be talking more about this in the future in subsequent episodes about what to do with those dull knives. But in the meantime, check out your knife block. Safely assess the level of dull in your kitchen, and we'll be back to tell you about how to get them sharpened up and back into peak performance. That's it from Kyle's kitchen. Back to you in the shop, Josh.
Thanks, Kyle, in the kitchen. Just remember, these are tests for dull, not necessarily for sharp. If we get into testing how sharp a knife is, there's different tools and different tests that will do a great job with measuring exactly how sharp from a working edge all the way to razor sharp. These are tests for dull to understand which sections of your knife may need more attention than others, if there's any damage, and exactly how much material you have to remove when you sharpen. That's it for this week. I hope you learned something. Leave us a comment down below if we missed anything, or let us know what you want to see more of.